Welcome to Urban Fantasy PH. We are creatives who live in an urban society and give readers wish fulfillment by way of our stories, which is fantasy but reflective of reality. Here, we get to talk to fellow creatives like writers, authors, artists, comic book creators, filmmakers, you name it. We create and share our art here in the Philippines as well as abroad. My name is CJ Edmunds, I'm your host, and here is today's episode.
All right. Good morning, fellow bookworms, book hoarders, book lovers, and creatives. Yep, that's you. Top of the morning to you all. Another Wednesday. That means we've got another episode for you today. Today is episode 28 of the podcast. And like always, and during an ongoing season, our show is aired every Wednesday, both for Spotify as well as on my YouTube channel. You have the option to listen or to watch us. The choice is in your hands. And of course, while you're doing that, please subscribe or click the subscribe button and then ring the bell so you do not miss a single episode. And like always, our past episodes are all ready for you to return to or to listen chronologically if in case you're joining us for the first time. Now, they say that creatives, especially writers, mind their own experiences when they write. Now, for today's episode, we have somebody who does exactly that. Ever since he was a child, he was always been fascinated by cryptids and things that thrive, and we assume that they also go bump in the night. But having established phspirits.com, he has been conducting independent research into the myths and legends, as well as folk stories of everybody here in our own Philippine archipelago, but specifically focusing on mythical creatures. Now, if he has encountered any so far in his actual research, well, I guess it's time to ask him. A pleasant and good morning to you, Mr. Karl Gaverza. Hello, good morning.
Hey there. Good morning.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today. And we met during Comic Area. This was held last August 5. And by the time this episode airs, another edition of Comic Area would have just concluded, which was October 7, both held at the Robinson's Galleria. I was wondering, when you attend events like these, do you have any expectations or do you try to keep your mind blank and just wait for whatever surprise or surprises the universe may give you for that day?
Lots of surprises happen. I really don't expect things, especially with fans from my page, because a lot of people like just leave likes and don't really order online. But when I
Okay.
do these conventions, I'm always surprised that like, oh, I follow you. Can I get the whole set? And I'm like, oh,
And that's always heartwarming to, for any creative that they recognize and they give value to your work and automatically right there, oh, whatever it is you're having, I'm getting all of it. So far, has
yeah.
any surprise in particular stood out in the times that you joined cons like Comic Area?
Uh, there was one in
Uh-huh.
Comiket.
Okay.
I came there early because we had to do ingress and set everything up. And the moment I finished setting up, one of the other merchants
Mm-hmm.
came to me and they said, "Oh, I want to buy a full set." And it's like no customers, just the merchant
Just a
did
fellow
that, and I
merchant.
was like, "Wow, just a fellow merchant." Yes.
Nice, nice. Yeah, Comic Con is always a great way to meet fellow merchants and, of course, fellow readers as well, who would love
Mm.
to read more of what you do. I was wondering, when you started writing and creating, perhaps that was also a surprise for you, or were you always a creative person from the get go?
I wouldn't say I was completely creative. Most of the stuff I did, especially with myths, was for the
Mm-hmm.
academe. I
Yeah.
didn't
Okay.
really do anything creative with them until I wanted to get a book out,
Mm-hmm.
uh, a book of Encyclopedia of Mythical Creatures, which turned into my research. My whole thing was I have to write every day until the book is
Okay.
released. Now that didn't happen, and the book's just releasing now. It I've been doing it since 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wrote for the page was basically flavor text for the different mythical creatures. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
funny how I got to there because I have a really good friend. He took his thesis was about mythical creatures, and so was mine. And we just decided to swap. I gave him my
Mm-hmm.
research. He gave me his illustrations,
Okay.
and yeah. So when I started the stories, it was a push. I used all his illustrations because I the thing I did with my page is that I wanted people to illustrate creatures that have never had
Mm-hmm.
illustrations done for them, as well as
Mm-hmm.
stories.
Okay. Yeah, and collectively, speaking from as a reader's perspective, it does come across as not just, of course, it's entertaining, but also it doesn't come off as it doesn't come off as too scholarly. And I was wondering if that's the kind of that's how you really wanted from the get-go. But that's going to be part of the question that I'm going to be asking a little while later on. But I was wondering, some people view creativity as a form of therapy. Some people view it as a form of expression. I was wondering, which of the two do you agree with more? Or perhaps creativity for you is probably something altogether different?
Creativity to me is basically compromise
Okay.
because when you create, you want to express yourself, but you also
Mm-hmm.
want to be understood. So for me,
Okay.
it's a fine line between what I really want to give out to the world,
Mm-hmm.
and also I want them to understand where these stories are coming from, how they can be authentic. Because my whole thing is fine, I do get creative license with
Mm-hmm.
some of my stories, but I always bring it back to where those stories came from, like the original myths. That's why in my Mythical Obscurus series, there's a description of the creature as well as a fictional story attached.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so if I do it too expressive, like uh, experimental prose, that sort
Yeah.
of thing, people won't be able to understand. But then if I do it uh, to be understood, then it tends to be dry. Like it's hard for people to get excited about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things I appreciated, that it reads off not just like a story, but it kind of like gives you an idea that you're paraphrasing an actual incident that happened, which involves
Mm.
creatures, and that's also a nice way of a great way of presenting the creature in itself. As I said, that so that it doesn't sound too encyclopedic or too scholarly, but at least it's something that's accessible to readers, because what is the most accessible
Yeah.
art form, which is literature, and something uh, that moves forward within a story. Can you take us back in the day? Like, what were the kind of books did you read growing up, or were there books something that you discovered on your own, or perhaps your early years of reading were based on other people's recommendations?
Uh, Based on myths, I had my favorite book was World Mythology by Arthur Cottrell.
Okay.
It's an encyclopedic book about different world mythologies. So you have Celtic, Norse, uh,
Hmm.
Indian, Asian, East Asian, that sort of thing. So I was the kind of kid that would read encyclopedias for fun. So
Nice.
it was like that. But I was a very voracious reader.
Okay.
My favorite was definitely Agatha Christie. I read all
All
her
right.
books, even the
Nice.
new ones, which like she did, but her estate managed to get other authors to play within her
Mm-hmm.
sandbox or the world she
Yes.
created. They
Um,
are okay.
I haven't caught up with the new versions of the film adaptations, but I take it that you being a big fan of Agatha Christie, you probably already have. So, do you like the new adaptations, new film adaptations of her work?
Like Murder on the Orient Express,
Yeah,
that sort
Murder
of
on
thing.
Orient Express. Yeah, Murder on Orient
Yeah.
Express, and then there's an Haunting in Venice. Yeah,
Mm,
are they
yeah.
do you feel that they embody the spirit of the books? If in case you are someone who has not read Agatha Christie.
Yeah. They're pretty good. I was very entertained by them.
Okay. I still remember the earlier versions with Peter Ustinov as Hercule Poirot, and I enjoyed those growing up. So it's nice to
Mm,
see a different. It's nice to see a different take of Poirot by way of Kenneth Branagh, who in my eyes can do no
yeah.
wrong. So, um,
Yeah.
when did you? Yeah. So you said that you became
Uh,
a voracious reader later on. Yeah, I'm sorry. You wanted to say something. You wanted to
oh
add.
yeah. I was and still am really into comic books.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a DC guy.
Yay!
So it's like Batman, Batgirl. Like um my goal now is to have a comic based on each one of my stories.
Ooh, I would
So
love that.
like that's like 200 stories. So we'll see what happens.
You have so many to pick from. So in terms of
Yeah.
material, I don't think you'll run out. But I was wondering, when did you think you realized that you liked reading about the darker side of things, or if not, the supernatural and the occult?
Uh, that I don't know. Like I was also a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft.
Okay,
Uh, growing up, I had like his entire uh discography. Well,
his
like
entire
I had a
collection.
big
So yeah,
hardbound. Yeah, yeah. I had a big hardbound collection of all his works, and
nice.
that was like my first exposure to
Mm-hmm.
horror and stuff. But really, what started me on Philippine horror was a movie, Shake, Rattle, and Roll. I forgot the number of
Yeah, there are a
that,
lot.
but it's the one with the manananggal.
It could be the earlier ones, either the first or the
Yeah, yeah,
second.
one
I
of the
don't know.
earlier ones. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, when you think about it, that particular series of films is a great way to introduce people to Philippine folklore, because there's a lot, and reading more of the supernatural and with a mysterious and macabre premise. Did this lead to the creation of PH spirits, or did writing the volumes of Mythica Obscura come first? So which one came first?
The site PH
Oh, the
Spirits
site
came
first. Okay,
first.
PH spirits came first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
For those who are okay, sure.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you were going to add something to that.
Uh, I can do that later. You were saying?
Okay, so I was saying that for those who are not aware of Philippine Spirits or PH Spirits, that is your Instagram and Facebook pages where you showcase different creatures of Philippine folklore. And some of the creatures that you talk about on your page are also the creatures that you feature in your printed work that is called Mythica Obscura. Now, for those who have yet to get their copies of the 4 volumes, of which, yay, all 4 are here.
Oh, nice.
um, yeah. I was wondering, can you give our listeners an overview of exactly what is Mythica Obscura and how did you come up with the name for the collection?
Mythical Obscura is basically a collection of short stories based on mythical creatures of the Philippines. So you have one illustration and description of the mythical creature, as well as a fictional story attached to that creature. Um, yeah, I
Yes, give
just
them a
picked the
sample.
word Mythical Obscura.
There you go.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what I was
Abyss. Sorry. Yeah. So each illustration is done by a different artist. Because I want to like give opportunity to Filipino illustrators. And Mythica Obscura as a name just like came to me randomly
Mm-hmm.
because I like dry titles, and Mythica Obscura
Okay.
was like Latin-ish.
Yes, it does. Latin-ish.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, cool, because originally the name of my page was The Spirits of the Philippine Archipelago,
Okay.
and I just like really gray titles. Like I don't want to like go boop. That's why one of the things that's been read that I made was my thesis. It's on
Mm-hmm.
Academia EDU. It's titled "The Myths of the Philippines."
Mm.
So that that one is like my template for naming things because it's like world mythology by Arthur Cottrell, uh, that sort of thing. It's like very terse.
I was wondering, is there a logistical separation for the creatures within the four volumes? Like, why were some creatures were in the first and they were not put in the second, or how are some in the third and not in the fourth? Was there some sort of reason why they're there first?
Um, yeah, for the first few volumes, I wanted to have introductions. Like in the series, there's a Capre and there's also Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown
Yes.
is a Capre that lives in Malacanang Palace. So I'm like, okay, have a Capre so that you can introduce the concept of it. And when he reads Mr. Brown, then they'll be able to understand fully. But mostly
Mm-hmm.
it's just a random collection of my stories. I'm just like, oh, this is cool. I want people to read this. And it's also really limited by the illustrations that they have because when when I do the illustrations, I have to buy them wholesale, like buy them and the reproduction rights for
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
illustration. So a
Mm.
lot of the ones there are like uh, illustrations that I paid for already in full.
Okay. Oh, all right.
So
I didn't know that. So yeah, that basically raises the value of the volume itself. Yeah, I'm curious about the also about the amount of research that goes into one volume. I was wondering, how do you decide which creature to put on a particular volume, and do you happen to have a team that helps you also with your research?
I wish. Like I want the point of the different creatures in the volumes is I want to show the diversity
Mm-hmm.
of creatures in the Philippines. It's like my way of saying I hate using the term Filipino mythology. I
Mm-hmm.
say mythologies in the Philippines because there are a plurality of belief systems
Okay.
in the Philippines, and each one of those
Right.
belief systems is basically a different way of looking at the world,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I got when I first started researching because I came from a social science background. Linguistics was my major in college,
Okay.
and it really instilled in me like how to catalog things, how to break things down. Uh, so like going back to Mythica Obscura, I really just wanted to show how different creatures are from each other. So you have like the Banwa Anon, which is like an encanto from Cebu.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Digkosanon, which are wind spirits from Samar. So it's just like I try to get a little bit of every creature from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. They're not equal. There are like a lot more creatures from Luzon than the others,
Mm,
but that's also due to my research. Because
okay.
like uh, what I do is I do secondhand and firsthand research. So I also go around the Philippines interviewing people about their versions of mythical creatures.
Oh, nice to
And
get to travel.
uh, well, when I have funds. And the other side is where I go diving through books, like go to the different libraries around, like Filipinas Heritage Library, seeing those different kind of theses and
Hmm.
books.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much how I do that.
Nice. I was wondering which comes first usually. Would it be the verbiage that comes with the drawing, or maybe the drawing first, and then that's when you decide what to say about the creature? Because as you pointed out, what you would usually do is you have a description of what the creature is, its origins, and then you have a piece of poetry or a piece of story, or which is literature that accompanies that drawing, and which, as I said, does come out as like an account of an actual sighting, which is really very entertaining to read.
Mm. Well, the first thing is the
Hmm.
research that comes in, and the next part is getting an artist. Like usually, when I do calls for artists, I look at their portfolio and it's like, oh, your art style would go really well for this specific creature. And then after the illustration is done, that's when I imagine the story.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's like one of my favorite stories that I made. It's about the Magtatanggal. It's basically the proto version of a manananggal, and instead of half body, it's the
Yeah,
heads and the intestines.
I got a question for that later on, but yeah, it's the illustration itself is gruesome to see, and imagine yourself being face to face with a creature like that. You'd be like, okay, you're done
Yeah,
for.
it's actually been pretty annoying because a lot of the creatures I have, like they're gory, I guess, and it's why I gave up on TikTok because my account kept getting suspended because I kept
What?
posting different
Oh,
creatures. And
okay.
like when I did my TikTok, it's like a voiceover describing the creature, but like I couldn't use a lot of the art
Mm-hmm.
because they just kept censoring it, which is weird because like Facebook doesn't do that at all. Like I have an illustration of Tambaloslos, which is this creature with a
Mm-hmm.
gigantic penis, and uh, the creature attacks women and tries to assault them.
Yeah.
But if the woman takes off her top, uh, the erection from the penis will be too much and it falls over, giving the woman ample time to run away.
Okay. And that didn't get censored. It's still
No,
there.
it
Mm-hmm.
got stolen. Like another art page took the illustration.
Oh wow. Well,
Yeah,
legally, I hope you were still able to protect yourself from that and claim ownership.
yeah. Well, people reported it, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. In volume three, you had an entry for Diwata, and on the next panel, there is an entry for Encantada. And growing up, I'm guilty of this. We sort of lumped these two figures together as one and the same, but given your description, they're not, right? They're two different things. So
In that sense, I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah. So I was just waiting. What would be what do you think that is? Why do people kind of like lump these two as one and the same. Is media at fault for that, or lack of exposure in terms of literature, or how is it? What do you think that is?
Uh, it's really the I would say it stretches back to the American occupation,
Okay.
because they wanted something like folklorists, priests, anthropologists, and different kind of researchers wanted to show these creatures palatable to the
Mm-hmm.
American audience. So, like Encantada and Diwata were both under the umbrella of fairies
Okay.
or elves, um,
Mm-hmm.
which like harkens back to uh, was that Nordic myth, right?
Mm-hmm.
A-
Yeah.
and and now like if you search for them on the internet, it's like Maria Makiling is the Diwata and fairy of Mount Makiling, which is very well. It's not a very accurate uh, part to play for them because Diwata comes from the word Deva, which is a Sanskrit word that was brought to the Philippines by trade with the Indian subcontinent. And Encantado, Encantada is obviously Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So, Diwata are divine beings. They're demigods, sometimes even said as gods in their area, while Encantos and Encantas are weaker. They have
Mm-hmm.
magic powers, true, but they're not on the level of Diwata.
Okay, so there's good for that clarification. You know that there's a hierarchy for that, and from what I gathered from reading, Diwata are more benign, and Encantada are a little bit more mischievous, or if not, they can be nefaric as well if they choose to.
Uh, there's actually like Diwata's revenge is a lot worse than Encantos because I
For
take the
sure.
story of yeah, take the story of Maring Sinutuan, uh, Maria Varayat in Pampanga. Like if
Hmm.
you take anything from her domain, she will follow you with thunderstorms and lightning until you either die or return that uh, thing back
That
to uh, her home. And it's like it can even be like a small thing, like even like a mango from a mango tree, and you'll be
hmm
cursed forever or until you return it to the mountain.
or maybe make paalam first before you get anything. Sort of like,
Yeah.
yeah, or sort of like a version of tabi tabi po. Whenever you're gonna get
Mm,
something from that area, right? At least give permission
yeah.
before doing the deed. And yeah, I was just gonna say something about Diwata as part of the next question, because you did mention that the word Diwata came from the word Sanskrit, the Sanskrit word that's Devata. And in my own readings, I also found that the name Capre is of Arabic origin, taken from the word
Yeah.
kefir,
Kafir.
yeah,
Yeah.
which was used to refer to non-Muslims who were dark-skinned. So I was wondering, how much of a foreign influence do you think we had in our own mythology, or perhaps in the naming of some of the creatures that we've come to accept today?
There um hmm, there are a lot of names that come from foreign sources, like you said, the Capre, and there's like the Encanto, Encanta.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because there's this mishmash of both folk Catholicism and folk Islam, where the beliefs were syncretized with each of those. Islam, obviously, in Mindanao, and Catholicism everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So the names really come from interacting with different cultures. Like it's not just Catholicism or Islam; it's also trade with different Southeast Asian countries
Mm-hmm.
or uh, maritime trade with India as well. So, but a lot of the names out there are descriptive. Like you have uh, Katsila, which is a type of Encanto, which comes from the name Castilla.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of what I do isn't just pre-colonial. Like I
Okay.
have stories about the Christian devil or uh, different angels that are part of Islamic belief, like the
Mm-hmm.
Biradali. So
Yeah.
um, the foreign name creatures are actually a minority. There are a lot of extant creatures that come from native terms.
Okay. I forgot about the number of mythological creatures that we have in our folklore, but among Asian countries, are we the ones raking it with the most number, or do we have competition?
Well, in my research, I cataloged 3,000.
Okay, wow, that's a lot.
Uh, it is. Uh, but yeah, I actually haven't seen this kind of research done in other Southeast Asian countries. Like
Mm-hmm.
India, obviously has had a lot of research done with different kind of demons, but
Mm-hmm.
those also influence us. Like one of my favorite creatures to talk about are the moon eaters. They're the cause
Okay.
of lunar eclipses. So every time there's a lunar eclipse, a different kind of animal or dragon is
Mm-hmm.
blamed
Like
for
our
that eclipse.
Bakunawa.
Like yeah, but there are also like 15 other creatures like the Bakunawa. So you have the Arimanga, which is a giant lion. You have the
Mm-hmm.
Badina Mamang from Surigao, which just means large animal. You have the Sowu of the Tibolis, which is a python.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Bakunawa in Palawan, in the the Tagbanwa areas, where
Yeah.
it's a giant centipede.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
Also
all
different
these
for, yeah.
different Yeah, so it's like all these different cultures impacting each other.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Asian countries, I suppose you may have seen some similarities between our creatures and theirs in the span of your research.
Yeah, definitely. Like the best example I have are Mananagalay creatures, because they're all present in different parts of Southeast Asia. Like
Mm-hmm.
in Thailand, but instead of half body, it's the head and the entrails.
Yes.
So you have like the app of Cambodia, the Krause of Thailand, the Leyak of Malaysia, and the Penanggalan of the Indonesians. So there's this commonality between all the different kinds of mythical creatures, or especially like women mythical creatures that has happened. Because it's like we have the belief of the Manchanak and there's the belief of the Pontianak in different Southeast Asian countries. So like there's a commonality in between there, and it's also by trade. Like some belief systems like came back to the Philippines from Malaysia and Indonesia.
Mm-hmm. Most of the ones that we've encountered, they're, as you said, they're mostly women. I was wondering, would there be a male version of that, or
Yeah,
but it's not as popular as the female version?
yeah, definitely. Like for Manananggal, there is a male version of it called the Ike or Iki
Mm-hmm.
from Quezon Province.
Okay.
Aswang can be male or female depending on where you are. It's actually very interesting because I was doing field research in Iloilo because that's where my dad's family is from.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain barangay that they would not let me and my research partner go to because they said it was full of aswang.
Mm.
And now it's like now I want to go more, but they blocked us off and we weren't able to go there.
Mm. Okay. There is, since we're on the subject of manananggal and all that, there is an entry for that similar vivisecting creature that you have in, I think it's in volume 3. It's called the Anananggal. There's no letter M there. And then, of course, it sounds the
Yeah.
same to the one that we know, which is Manananggal. So I was running a bonus treat for our listeners, a free lesson. Can you please tell them the difference? I mean, reading about them alone is gruesome enough.
The term Anananggal actually comes from Bicol.
Mm-hmm.
I got it from a book called
There
Bicol
you go.
Beliefs and Folkways, a showcase of tradition. Yeah, so that's just what they termed it. Because if it's not Anananggal, it's called the flying aswang, which
Mm-hmm.
is like synonymous to different kinds of manananggal in the area. But I cataloged it as separate from the different kind of manananggal because of its unique quality to have that just be the organs.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not saying it's unique because in the Visayas, especially in Western Visayas, there's a creature that's exactly the same as
Mm.
it was called the wuwug, or the in some places they call it the unga unga, but I've just seen wuwug used more.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. So this there is that, as I said, commonality with that specific creature wherein there are innards flying around.
yeah,
Or there's some sort of segmentation happens. So manananggal is from the waist down, and as you said, anananggal is from the neck. But
yeah,
they still float, either way. So if you
yeah,
guys catch sight of one of these things, if you're able to take a picture before you flee, then yeah, that'll be great.
yeah. But they're actually like weaker than you think. Like the
Mm-hmm.
way to harm an anananggal is just you take a pointy fruit. Like in the story, they used a pineapple, and
Pineapple,
if you
yeah.
throw it at if you throw it at the anananggal, the tinik will harm their internal organs, and then they'll just run away. Or if it's like if you hide in like a place with thorns,
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
the anananggal can't follow you because its innards will be shredded because of those thorns.
Right, right. Okay. It pays to know. It pays to know. Let's move on to the most popular creature in our culture, of course, which is aswang. And each region will have their own, as you've brilliantly presented in 4 volumes. There's a variation in Antique. There's also the Kiwig in Aklan. And I think there's another one in the
Mm-hmm.
Negros region, specifically in Bacolod. I was wondering, did you ever find out where exactly the creature originated, and why are there so many variations of just one creature?
Because linguistically, that words can have different meanings in different parts. So when you say
Mm-hmm.
aswang, for example, in Western Visayas, it's synonymous with manananggal. But
Mm-hmm.
there are other aswang that are called like the tik tik or the wak wak, and they are present in different parts of the country. Like aswang just became a catch-all term for different kinds of monsters. So you have the belief system that might be I've seen that it might be related to the Keswange beliefs of the Moluccan archipelago. Uh, like the actual deep dive into Aswang, I would recommend going to the Aswang project because they have a documentary about it. Uh,
Yeah, that's another site that also but I think it leans more heavily towards a specific creature, which is the aswang, right?
yeah. And also like with the Keswanga beliefs, they're also like similar in different parts of Southeast Asia,
Mm-hmm.
and there are like false etymologies of like the word aswang, because I've seen like people say, "Oh, aswang, it's a combination of asin and bawang, the two things that
Okay.
help keep the aswang away," which is like has no proof at all. So it's a bit annoying. But the categorizations of different kinds of aswang, you can credit is that Maximo Ramos in his Creatures of Philippine Lore Mythology.
Okay.
He broke it down to like the blood drinker aswang, the flesh eater aswang, the witch like aswang. Because like aswang can be um, flesh eaters like cannibals. They can be viscera suckers. Especially like this is a popular thing where the aswang or the tik waits
Mm-hmm.
on the victim's roof,
Yeah.
and then they red tongue go their long skinny red tongue goes down to the sleeping pregnant woman, and then it eats the feces as well as the viscera or the innards of the victim.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time they go through the anus
Mm-hmm.
and just like pull everything out. There's also aswang that are corpse eaters. They and this is like an introduction to the magic that the aswang can make. If people do not keep vigil over the body, like if there are not lights all around the body,
Mm-hmm.
the aswang can steal the body and use magic to make a banana tree look like the corpse, while it eats the corpse in another area, and the relatives are none the wiser. Um, you also have shape shifting aswang. They usually take the form of large uh, cats, dogs. It's actually very interesting because in my research, I haven't found any note of
Mm-hmm.
aswang turning into reptiles or insects. It's always just those kinds of mammals.
It's only those. This is different still from the the Ebwa that you wrote in volume
Oh
two, right? I
yeah,
mean, Ebwa is not an aswang. It's a ghoul.
corpse. Yeah, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
corpse
a
eater.
corpse eater. It's a
Uh,
corpse eater. So it's
yeah,
obviously it can't feel.
yeah.
And Ebwa also does not have any how should we say this, magical abilities to to shroud its actual appearance or whatever it's eating.
Yeah, it is there. Like if you don't do the vigil for 9 days, like after 9 days, it will move on to another victim. The
Hmm.
Ebwa is
Yeah.
actually from the Tingwian ethno-linguistic group, and it's also the reason why they place iron crosses on the coffins of the deceased,
Mm,
so that the Ebwa
okay,
won't be able to dig them up and eat them.
because of the iron.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? The more the merrier seems to apply to this case, and I guess also as a creative, when you have more than one creative work to share, because there was another comic that I got from you during Comiceria, which is the Alad, which is over
Yeah.
here. So I was wondering, is this featured creature of your own making, or was it also based on the Aswang because it also has wings, but their toes and fingers are gruesomely pointed, backwards from their joint. Let me show it here on the screen, and it is really gruesome. There we go.
Yeah.
That's how it looks like.
Um, I cataloged it different. I cataloged it as a halimaw instead of an aswang
Okay.
because okay. So aswang is a general term for different kinds of creatures in the Philippines, but it's also very specific. Like
Hmm.
an aswang has different ways of getting its power, but one of the most common ways is to imbibe a black chick and that's where it gets its power. But the Alan itself is a different creature that uh, that wait, sorry. It's a different creature that is separate from that is very distinct away from the
Mm-hmm.
usual descriptions of the aswang. So that's why I cataloged it differently.
Okay.
But they're not completely uh, harmful. They take care of children as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they wouldn't hurt children, but adults are free game. So they attack the adults in the area.
Okay, which leads me to the next question, and I didn't want to spoil, for those who have not read it, because one of the things that the Alan does at the end of the comic, which for me sort of redeems them a little in my eyes, and leads to this two-part question. That what you said also answers that, which is the reason why the Alan did that. I'm not going to say what they did. That's a no spoiler, but is it also important to give monsters some sort of redeeming trait, perhaps to humanize them to some degree, so that it works better creatively and also in a more literary
Oh
sense?
no, to me, oh no, nope. To me, monsters are monsters, and they should be treated as such because there's actually
Okay.
a very uh, s- a reason why these creatures are described the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
In society, you have the well, the most vulnerable members, which
Mm-hmm.
are usually pregnant women and children. And these creatures are used to make sure that they don't go alone at night around the village or like in lonely roads. So uh, like these aswang, I'm going to use the aswang as the example. So if people are scared of the aswang, that means they'll rely more on their community,
Mm-hmm.
and the community itself would be more prepared to deal with these kinds of
Okay.
creatures because to some people aswangs are actually real, and that belief carries on to today. Like you have new practices. Like I
Mm-hmm.
know of this one informant that told me that they burn rubber and tires in front of their house so that the aswang
Okay.
won't get them. And it's very new. Like obviously, like in 100 years past, there wouldn't be rubber tires to burn. So that kind of new quality of making sure that these members of society are protected
Mm-hmm.
um, happen. Like for children, especially, like they walk around the forest that and might get lost. You have this creature called the bugsok, which is from
Mm-hmm.
Bicol. So it's this black being that walks around with its hands, like in a permanent handstand position. And when they encounter children, they inflame the children's legs, making them very painful.
Mm.
So they would walk on their hands as well, and that's how more bugsok are created. So yeah, like to me, I wouldn't give redeeming factors the most of these creatures. I have actually cataloged different guardian spirits as well as good spirits, but they're
Okay.
like very few and far in between. Like spirits, they're mostly connected to rice. But yeah, like you have creatures like the Kamanandapla, which is this small. I hesitate to use the word fairy, but it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of it's like in that
It's a little
area
too
of
too
description.
westernized of a description, or too generalized, too westernized of a term too. to lump them all in that umbrella, right?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, so it gives flowers to children that are left alone. So it's basically a creature that isn't malicious, isn't malevolent, isn't even mischievous as a trickster. It's
Hmm.
just there and like it's there to help children.
Yeah, I think that's in volume 4, if I remember right. The yeah, Kabananda Black. Yeah, there it is. Volume 4. Sweet. Yeah, little illustration there. Oops. Oh, all right. Well, I was writing these volumes since this is the October is Halloween time, and it's we always associate it with the month where the genre of horror is fair game to everyone else. I was wondering, writing these volumes, has your definition of horror changed, or in your own way, how would you define horror?
Well, a lot of what I do is like George R. R. Martin killing everyone, honestly. But the way that horror shaped the way that I write now
Mm-hmm.
is to make sure that people don't expect what's happening next. Or I also do like very classic uh, fairy tale
Mm-hmm.
inspired stories, especially with like creatures such as the Sagai that bleed children dry for their gold mines.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, okay, I could do a twist with that. But a lot of the work, honestly, has already been done for me
Mm-hmm.
by the research because these creatures are already scary on their own. I don't really need to do much about it. It's
Right, right.
like, oh, this creature eats children and puts them in a giant pot on its back. And then, like, okay, a lot of children die in my stories. Like,
Look, that alone, that concept alone is horrific to think about. So yeah, I get you there. In your years as a creative, is there probably one lesson about the process that you've learned and live by after having learned that, and you sort of like apply that now to each and every project that you do?
uh, I just tell the truth, really. Like,
Okay.
I want these stories to be as authentic to the original folktale as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I'm not going to change the fact that things kill people or that sort of thing. Like creatively, I I try to make sure that that grain of consistency also comes in my creative process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's next on the horizon for you?
I am currently in the middle of Halimaween,
Okay.
which
Yes.
is a hashtag Inktober like prompt list where every day is a different mythical creature. I'm also compiling all the 4 volumes of Mythica Obscura into one book.
Mm-hmm.
So the book is probably going to launch by December. I
Okay.
also
Awesome.
have this Dungeons and Dragons supplementary book. That's a bestiary of different mythical creatures from the Philippines. It's getting
Ooh.
kickstarted in December as well. Uh, and I really want to plug this. Look up Project Local Heritage.
Mm-hmm.
It's this endeavor by me and my partner Maita, who is immersing in the different tribes of the Davao area. And we will make children's books based on their belief systems, as well as translating them into their different languages.
Nice. When can readers expect this to come out?
Uh, in the next few
In the
months,
next few months.
like honestly, like research
Mm-hmm.
is very hard to do alone in the Philippines, because especially when you talk about indigenous peoples, you have to deal with the NCIP, or the National Commission on Indigenous People. You have to get their first and prior informed consent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of bureaucracy happening with those different institutions.
Mm-hmm. Well, we wish you luck in all those projects, and I'm sure that if they follow you on social media, they will be, always be updated on that. And the best place to follow you, which is also the place where I found you, or got to talk to you, was through Instagram. Just look for
Mm-hmm.
PH Spirits, yeah, and would be the same site as well for Facebook. But we
Yes.
will put all of that on the show notes, so that when they want to follow you, it will be just a click away. All right, it'll
Yeah.
be easy for
Thank
them
you.
to do that. So that's it. That is a wrap for today. Thank you so much, Mr. Jean Carl, for joining us today on this episode.
Of
And as I
course.
said, I wish you all the best in all your future writing endeavors. And heck, if there's another volume 5 in the works for Mythica Obscura, I would love to get that as well. And
Okay.
thank you to Spine Books as well for your support since day one. If you are a creative and you would like to be featured on the podcast, simply email us at urbanfantasyph@gmail.com. If you wish to get a copy of the different Mythica Obscura volumes, of course, simply just follow John Carl on Instagram, look for PH Spirits, and be updated on which con they're going to be joining. And you can also get it from there. And you can have it signed. And I'm sure Jean Carl will be more than happy to sign your copy for you. All right. If in case you also want to get a copy of Sojourn in Turkey Now, my own writing endeavors, just simply visit Spinebooks on Shopee. That'll be shopee.ph/Spinebooks. You can follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and now Threads, as well as me over at cjedmunds.com. Till the next episode, Indie Creatives Unite. Keep creating, keep reading, stay safe, stay creative, stay informed. Namaste, and blessed be. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Jean Carl.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was another episode of Urban Fantasy PH. Join us next time as we feature another creative soul who wants their art to be seen, heard, and shared. If you have your own work to share, just email us at urbanfantasyph@gmail.com. Till the next episode, this is independent author, singer-songwriter, radio personality, voice actor, and fellow creative, CJ Edmunds, reminding you to always listen to your heart, create with your mind, and share with your soul. Goodbye, everybody. Namaste. Blessed be.